Record.
Student pull heat over there?
I don't know if we'll be able to, I didn't see any minutes come through, and we're supposed to approve minutes, or at least it was on the agenda.
So we had Beth doing minutes. She let me know that they disappeared. That she wrote them down and she took them and she couldn't find them.
Her computer ate the minutes?
And so, you know, we have these recordings, but we don't have anything to approve here. So
I'll approve that.
call to order, we'll take roll. Eddie, go ahead.
Eddie Bell, present.
Tony Benedetti here.
Tiffany Hughes here.
Eric Fisher present.
Brady Oxender here. So we've done that. As I said, we have no minutes to approve, so we'll jump right into a shelter update.
Just passed out the, I don't know who all needs it. We had asked how much it would be to add 3 foot of concrete around the perimeter. That way there was a little bit of edge around there. It's an additional $37.46. We'd asked them about the downspouts and the tile to the street, which we thought it was included already, but we just wanted to triple check that. We'd also asked them an approximate amount for a 24 by 24 shelter. And that he gave us about 33 to 38,000. That would be for a second shelter or a totally, you know, if everybody decided they would rather go that direction. That's a much smaller one. We did tell him that we would actually we would want to make sure that that was open on all 4 sides. We would not want a back wall or anything to that particular one. So we made sure that he knew that. But that would be the one that's in that low area that might be a little bit too wet for it, but you know, just maybe not. So once we had somebody go out and look at it, we would see if that's a place that we could actually put it. We asked them when construction would be able to be started. They could actually start on the excavation and all of that once permits are issued. But as far as the construction itself goes, we're already looking at April, and that's if we were signing a contract now. So if this goes into January, February, we may be pushing it for the year.
Is that because of weather or because they're busy?
Contractors and just parts, supplies, scheduling,
Yeah.
everything.
All of the above, yeah.
Okay.
So,
So I am inclined to to go ahead and pass and recommend to council that planning and zoning would like council to look at building a shelter. We have suggested sites, 2 sites.
okay,
We have done some research on sizes. And that would then be, you know, subject to council's approval to put out to bid. That, you know, I think we've done enough.
Well, I thought at the last
Diligence.
meeting, didn't I say? that
yeah, we said we were
council-
going to, but I think the main thing is that the way that we need to do it, or should I actually get the bids first? Just
No,
go ahead and
because-
ask them first?
Yeah, because I think you have to forward it up, it's gotta get appropriated
Okay.
anyway, so we would have to do an administrative, if we want more quotes or bids, we would get them.
Do we just need a yay or nay on that, or do we actually
I
have
would
to?
take a vote, I would just say, yeah, I would recommend.
Because we don't have
basically what-
legislation.
Well, no, I would recommend it's not legislation, it's just
Right.
a
Yeah, it would be,
recommendation.
yeah, it would be Tony reporting that
Okay.
planning and
Yeah.
zoning has voted to favorably report this notion, if not a motion, to council and recommend its adoption.
Okay,
The only thing I wanna add is, do we wanna prioritize one over the other and say we recommend this one first, this one second? And
Yeah, I mean, I
then-
think, Tony, you're willing to say that most of the discussion has been about putting one across
Yeah.
from the baseball court, but there's also talk about down there. Obviously, if council wants to tell us to,
One
you know,
vote, 0, yeah.
yeah, to
Yep.
do neither, build it someplace else, whatever, but the recommendation is,
Well, like I said, I don't remember exactly what I said at last month's meeting, but I thought it was something to the effect, is that planning and zoning is recommending a shelter.
Yes.
At a location to be determined.
Yes, that's
I
what
think
we,
that's
that's
what I
what we
said.
came with at the end of the discussion, but it wasn't, I don't think anything was formally recommended to me yet, and I think you reported that to council as well. and
so now you can take a formal
It's
recommendation.
formal, it's official now.
Yeah,
Not yet.
Um,
usually all in favor, everybody moves on.
So, yeah, I guess without objection, we will do this.
we'll do it on
Are there any
Tuesday.
objections?
No, and I'll have her add that to the agenda. We'll just, instead of old business, new business, or we can do it under your report, cause it's the first meeting of the month. It's entirely up to you, or I could just
I
do
think
like,
It's just part of the report. I
okay,
think.
that's fine. So Tony, that's your don't forget.
I'm writing it down, actually.
You know,
Write
I'm telling you to
calendar.
write it down, cause I'm gonna forget.
And we could-
Or you can,
Hopefully won't
there's
be a big
3 of us
formally
here,
report.
I can only take a third of the blame.
Well, and I would say, my recommendation would be that the primary spot would be by the, basketball court.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you
Right.
could, I would say you recommend that we want to build a
Okay.
shelter about this size, we want it to be across from the basketball court, and, you know, that is all that we can do as planning and zoning, is make a
Right.
recommendation. So that's our recommendation.
We can provide them the information as well.
Yeah.
Locational maps, whatever they need.
Yeah.
Easy enough.
Cool. Done. Amphitheater update.
Met with, David Ponte, who's doing some pro bono work for the village. Asked him to address the ADA question specifically that had come up prior. The short and sweet of it is that we have to devote 20% of any amount we spend on the amphitheater to ADA type improvements, that is the requirement, if technically feasible. So what that means
Is
is.
that part of the grant?
No,
It's just a-
this is just, yeah, well, it would be part of our spending on the project, so yes.
But it's not a requirement of
It's, yeah, it's not a requirement that we make, I mean, we have to follow code in these cases. So the architect has said, look, it's gonna be 20% of what you're spending. If you're spending 50,000, okay, that means 20% is 10,000, right? We spend 100, it's 20,000, right? But it's if it's technically feasible. So even, he said, even if he said, he was looking at it, he's gonna get us more of a formal email to describe whether it's required to or not. But he said, even if we had to do ramps to make it truly ADA accessible, that's gonna exceed the 20% of your project cost, and therefore it's not technically feasible. So you don't have to do it by code. Now, what would make sense, and I think we talked about this a little bit before, and the architect concurs, we talked about 2 things. One, you obviously want some ramps probably down by the stage anyways, right? So it's accessible both for us, equipment, and it would be ADA accessible for any people that would make their way onto the stage. But for viewers to watch it, we have a pathway, although the pathway may or may not be fully ADA accessible, we can set up parking spots or whatever at the top. Probably have to follow similar code like what you see in movie theaters, for example. If you have a spot for a wheelchair to pull up, you'd have to have a companion spot, so maybe you'd have a little more asphalt put along the side of the path, you'd have a bench, and then you'd have a spot where a wheelchair could be.
Yeah, being that we're providing no seating, I would think that as long as you have a parking pad
Yep,
for a wheelchair, you've got a place for someone else to unfold their chair and sit next to.
and that would fall within our 20% spending, so that would be fine. We would just have that addressed as part of the plan for the,
And so, I mean, yeah, I would say I would love to have the entire thing be ADA performer and spectator compliant.
yeah.
I can't imagine, in order to get someone safely, I
Down
mean,
to
in
the
order to
stage.
get a fully abled
Yeah,
person from the top to the bottom, you know, depending on what the weather's been like,
yeah.
isn't always gonna be the
No.
easiest thing.
He's gonna have an official discussion with our, with Blendon Township's,
Building department.
building department. Get them to, much like when we have anything with the building, we would get them to give a ruling, you know, what the code, you know, and we'd work it out, so.
And so do we think we have a quote based
I
on
do.
making it spectator compliant and doing the work we wanna do?
If you mean a quote for the actual work out there, no, it wouldn't exceed our 20%, right? So
I mean, the whole project.
the whole product, so okay. So if I was to say, what we do, because I don't remember where the email was, so off the top of my head, I think we were right about 50, right? If we add our 20%, we're 60, right? So there's our quote for the project at the moment, 60 grand. And we fudged a little bit for some electrical work based on what we were told, and some of those we'll get down to some details because we don't have any plans, you know, for the site yet.
So a 60 grand total project would
Yes.
require 20 grand from the village.
Well, 60 grand total project require 30 grand from the village based on the application, because we're 50, it's a 50%, it's a share, right? Now, we could actually.
It's not a 50,
It is a,
50, it's a 50%.
it's 50%, right, so if we were, well, if the whole quote is 60, the 50% is 30. I mean, it's 50%. So it can be in kind too. So
Right,
for
yeah.
example,
Well,
what we haven't worked out yet is if we wanna make sure we have some budgeted distance, right? So let's call it 80,000 for our purposes of budgetary, because we also get to claim in-kind time, right? In-kind time can include the architect's time, you know, can include our time, we can, you know, rightly put our salaries and what percentage that we're dedicating to it. So we can find a way to get there, you know, legitimately with some in-kind, dedication. So if I'm jumping up another 10,000, you know, each, that'll get us to 80, right?
Like we
But-
could try
but-
to get an electrician or
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that that works,
but the
that
true
lives in the
cost-
village.
Yeah, the true cost of the village, like the actual physical, I think, straight face cost would be $30,000 for an $80,000, you know, get from the grant.
okay. So I would say let's try and pull,
But we have to pay for it all upfront, one way or the other, so.
right, I would say let's try and pull final numbers together so that this can be,
Applied.
yeah, early
Okay.
January, we can put a whole package together to council.
Cool. Alright,
Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're talking about, as far as the amphitheater goes, is up on the road, or on the path, creating up there some ADA compliance,
yeah,
and then mowing and having some kind of path down,
yes,
and then the stage itself would be clearing it of trees,
yeah,
putting a composite decking down,
yes.
and running electricity to
I
it.
have some fence in the back too, for safety purposes.
And a fence in the
Just
back.
we won't fall off the ravine edge there, but yes,
And a ramp up to the up to the stage.
Are we missing anything?
we got all the basics.
You said lighting.
Yeah, and again, this is,
Yeah.
you know, this is to make it functional,
Yeah,
and then.
oh, yeah, do we hit the tuck pointing in the,
Right, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
to make it safe.
yeah,
So yeah, we make it safe, we make it functional, and then after a year, realize that it would be great if we could also do this.
yes, agreed.
Yep. Cool. Anything else to be said on the amphitheater?
I don't think so.
Okay, moving on to sign code.
You know what, I did not print sign code. Did you print the sign code? Yeah, let me see, let me print your computer real quick, 1 second, give us a
Okay.
quick break on that.
I thought that's what that was.
No, that's not what that is, my bad.
In the meantime, just to give you guys a heads up, we met with our state senator
Yeah.
and floated the idea of another round of capital funding to do some more things in the village. The one for the amphitheater we're talking about came through the Cultural Facilities Commission, right? And that one requires a 50% match.
Yeah.
We found that if it goes through the Department of Natural Resources, it looks like there's no match required,
Oh, wow.
so straight up free money. But, you know, the amphitheater probably wouldn't apply.
Yeah.
What does apply are things to improve nature or your access to it, basically. So I think the thought is we're gonna request money for what we're gonna call walking path improvements.
You read my mind. I was thinking like
yeah,
that.
That can be,
Significant.
Well, the thing that I was
Anything.
gonna bring up at, maybe at old business, new business was, you know, that area where I talked about with the pavilion. In trying to develop that, like that, there's the hidden lake that really needs
Yours
some
40
kind, at least a path for a maintenance guy to get. I don't know if you've been up there or if you've seen it, but, you know, the
No,
only people that
neither.
really, there's a few houses, I don't know what road it is, they, you know, their backyard faces out on it, it is
That's
a
my
mess,
office here.
you know, there, but,
That's my home
you know,
office.
along with a path kind of going to the pond, the hidden pond, is that what we're calling that one?
yes,
The hidden pond?
yeah.
You know, I'm thinking some kind of a walkway up, like where I envision the shelter at, and then a walkway up to the,
So
That was
here's,
free, now.
I
Where's
think
the
the
last
beauty in
one?
what we've done is we're
leaving it wide open.
requesting $500,000.
Mine's a brother.
There you go,
Yeah,
go bigger.
it's
Yeah.
significant.
And we're requesting it for
Mine's a
walking path improvements, so as long as
Falls under that.
it is
That's
walking
your
path adjacent, it is a walking path improvement. So if we find that we wanna do, if we're able to do a Jordan Road connector, if we're able to do a path that goes clear through the entire village, if we're able just to increase safety for
Well,
kids
I'd like
walking
be
to
clear,
and from
there's, you know, when
school.
it comes to paths, there's no
There's
lack
water.
of places.
And right, and so all we have to do is figure out how much money we would get and then how we can spend it all to make walking path improvements. And so in the near term, we don't have to know. And if we end up getting $65 and a pat on the back, then we can throw some gravel down somewhere and it's 65 bucks worth of gravel to improve the walking paths.
If you
Who's
forward
our
to me, I'll do
state
it.
senator that you met with?
Tina Maharoff.
Yeah, she's been very supportive too, she said.
I don't even know the name.
Well, so
Yeah, well, right,
she's,
said
so
that.
that, I mean, and we confirmed with her, the rub is that in January, in theory, they'll have drawn new districts, right? And so those new districts go into effect in January of '22.
Yeah, so we're
But the
gonna.
most popular proposal right now leaves Minerva Park with no air, right? We're being drawn into a district where no sitting senator lives.
Yes.
So like Tina Maharoth is in New Albany, her new district is New Albany,
But it stops.
but it doesn't make it to us.
Uh,
And then, Andy Brenner, Powell and Minerva Park have the same district, and Andy Brenner represents Powell, but he lives up north in Orange, so he wouldn't represent us. And then Stephanie Coonsey,
Huh.
we would be drawn into
Yeah.
the same district
I
as
just corrected in a
Worthington.
minute.
And Stephanie Coonsey represents Worthington, but she lives in Hilliard, and her new district would not. So we basically, for a year, would lose representation.
Yeah, for a year.
We would still have Senator Maharoth as our senator, and I firmly believe that she will continue to care about us, but she will also know that we can never vote for her again.
Yeah, it's kinda sucky.
And our House district, from what I've seen, does the same thing. We get drawn into nobody's
No
House
man's
district.
land.
So we're guaranteed pretty much that in 2022, we will have a brand new senator and a brand new state representative.
She's very good to me with, she's gonna be supportive, especially with that dollar amount, which is the important part.
Yeah,
So-
and the nice thing is that she does work with the whole Columbus Central Ohio caucus. So, yeah, the hope is that we can get all or part of those funds that can go toward, something that we need but can't afford to do ourselves.
There's a lot that falls in.
So yeah, when we can find free money, let's do it. So to walk through this a little bit, at the last meeting, we had talked about similar language to this. Beth took a look at it and had 5 recommendations. 2 of them are reflected here. The removal of, where you see the new E. Originally, we had non-commercial free speech temporary signs or free speech non-commercial. We've taken out the free speech. And then she suggested that we move the size up higher in that description, because in other sections in the code, we list the size of the signs and then what they are. And so this just matches better the rest of code. She had 2 comments that, she said we weren't basically being descriptive enough in code, but in each of those cases, it referenced, this section of code defines non-temporary sign, and it must adhere to this section of the code plus the things we say here. Well, when you go to that section of code, it's exhaustive. And so I think that I feel that this accurately addresses her concerns, and then of course we know that if we favorably report this, it will go to council to then go to the legislative committee where
Now look over.
they will look it over even more than we have. But I think it's our responsibility to give them, our best version of it and what we think is the best that we can do with no lawyers on our commission. So, if there aren't any questions, I would entertain a motion. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to hear them.
Well, I haven't had, it just came out today, so I didn't look at it, but I don't think I'm gonna have any questions or any concerns.
It's, yeah, Tony, you know that it'll get to legislative.
Yeah, that's one. Well, yeah, don't even get me started on that whole scenario.
But, you know, our goal is to give them the best starting document, and I think that we've, you know, we got rid of some things that were big problems, we got rid of some things that didn't make any sense, and like you wanted to do when we look at a section,
Let's
we
do it
backed
all.
up and looked at the whole thing, and I think made a much better starting place than just saying, let's eliminate 2 words.
I think you're guaranteed that what you started on was under I, and I guarantee that that'll stay the same.
Right.
Right, so stuff that will definitively be adjusted and changed significantly will be anything in regards, and I just received an email from the attorney today, which I haven't read yet in thorough, but about their analysis of the recent rulings, and it's gonna be, they're gonna, that recommendation goes legislative committee, there'll be a lot of changes here. So, it is what it is.
But, you know, yeah, we started this conversation to try and make sure that
Yeah, it's
that
addressed.
signs at commercial locations were maintained in good condition, professionally created and installed, and I think that'll,
Well, and this is, I mean, it's good to have this straightened out, so when people look at the sign code and say, hey, you know, cause that's been the problem in the past, if the code says this, but we're letting signs up and gets everybody all worked up.
yeah, so I think as planning and zoning, we've gone above and beyond, so I'm happy to recommend this up.
Yeah,
You just need a second,
Second,
whoever,
Here we go.
Okay.
Good. All in favor?
We'll say that Tony had the
go
second.
for it,
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye.
aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes, we will
Deal.
favorably report that, so Tony, you'll carry that as well to, and that we're recommending this language's adoption.
Legislation is scheduled for the
Is it
6th,
this?
No.
Second meeting then?
Second.
Okay, it was the word should be.
yes, it's the second.
That's good.
Yeah, we'll put it on the books today, I can't remember if it's 6 or 6:30 though, that I don't remember.
Alright, either way.
what the legislature.
Yeah, we did schedule it.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, any old business? See that? New business. So I've got 2 things, I think, do I have 2 things or 1 thing?
You have one for sure.
Okay, I have 2 things. One is just to talk about getting through the end of the year as far as our scheduling. I think, you know, the only thing that I think is pressing is getting the amphitheater moved on. But I'm
It's just application at this point, right? Just prepare the application.
I think, I mean, because council's going to have to appropriate money as
Yeah.
part of the match.
Yes.
But I think the application should be, you know, the filled out but not approved application should be part of our report. And I would imagine that will take some time to put together.
It will.
So,
Inevitably, I think in January, you're gonna review it regardless, right?
Right.
Because you're gonna have, you won't meet until the second meeting anyways, cause there's gonna have to be some, changes. I think some reappointments by the mayor, and there's gonna have to be,
Those have to be approved.
and the liaison will have to be reappointed.
okay, so let's,
So yeah, it's gonna wait till then anyways.
Yeah, so
We'll
if-
have time to do it.
yeah, if the plan then would be at the second meeting, at our first real meeting in January,
Yeah.
to have the application completed.
Correct.
That we can all use as our base document.
Yes.
Then I think that's good movement, especially to make in the last 2 months of the year.
Okay.
So if that's cool with everybody, this will be our last meeting for this year.
Fine with me. I got December craziness.
Yeah,
If
and
that's the case, and I wanna make my case, like we were talking about earlier, and finding out who's gonna start, or, I don't know if we need to come up with rules about how many meetings you miss, you know, but.
we have,
Yeah.
Well, there are actually.
yeah, you can't miss more than 3 meetings without an excused absence.
Yeah.
And as the chairman, I call an excused absence you sending me a message and saying, hey, I can't be there.
Okay,
And so, as of right now, I need John to let me know before the next, to be excused before the next meeting, or that will be 3 absences. And I need Donna to let me know, I can double check, I think before her next meeting, or that will be 3 absences.
Well, and I
Some
think.
people may be reappointed, I don't.
Yeah,
well,
and
no
I think in
points.
fairness, I think, you know, now that we're on recording, I think in fairness, it's making sure that people have the ability and the time. You know, are we missing because, you know, it's towards the end of the year, is this something you really still wanna do? So I think not just getting an excuse, but if they've missed 3, you know, that's potentially 2 or 3 months, is this something that you know, there are there are other people that would like to volunteer, so I mean,
Yeah.
it would be nice that if people don't want to continue, to just let us know, and maybe now's just not a good time for them.
Yeah, and I
So-
know, yeah, I mean, we were giving John plenty of
Absolutely.
leeway, having a child.
Exactly.
And I know Donna had some health issues, and so we were
Exactly.
making sure that,
Which is why we did the non-voting, so we
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
have, but if we've got, I don't think in the last 3 meetings we've had more than 3 or 4 people here. So I think
Yeah.
that's what's, that was the whole point of adding more people, so we had more input, and we haven't had that. So it would be, even though we're non-voting, it would be nice if
yep,
we had some
totally agree.
attendance.
Cause I like this kind of squeeze back in here, if any openings pop up.
Well, there
If I
may
could
be,
get you guys to, if I get council to approve me on it, or whoever requires to get me back on here.
council, yeah, they have to
But-
approve it, I don't get to.
Mayor makes an appointment,
Yeah.
and the council approves,
Approves it, right.
consents.
Okay, so the other piece of new business, Eric and I have been working, and it's not been as easy as we wanted it to be. And so we have a outline initial draft of our thoughts for a template that
yeah.
folks can submit if they want to, what we're calling, make improvements to reserves. So I don't know that, I think the plan was just to pass this out as new business
Yes.
and let folks look at the outline, and then we'll talk about it later.
And
But
I-
just wanted to get this out there to show that we are looking at things. I'd be happy to go, some other time through all of these and talk about all of our thoughts. But this is at least an initial document to start the conversation so that we can move forward on, providing that template so that everybody's on equal footing, everybody knows what the same process is in order to do these, in the hopes that it makes your life a little bit easier.
And I think part of that is just make a huge note that on the first meeting in January, this is one of the first things that we talk about, make sure, whoever the new liaison is, well, actually, they won't be here, depending,
No, the first meeting has to be on the second, because the second would be our work session meeting,
Yeah.
because council has to
yeah.
approve people, they have to put their own rules, and they have to
Right.
appoint people, including their own, the council liaison, so that way you have a full boat when you start your first
What-
meeting in
Yeah,
January.
it will just be that our first meeting will be, I mean,
Yeah,
I
that's
can
what
say it
they
right now.
Officially will be January 9th.
Yeah, our next meeting will be the 19th, we will not meet until then.
Perfect.
There's,
Okay,
there's no
that's what I
reason to
needed.
have a fake meeting on the 5th, just to say we met twice that month.
Right, no, and I think that was where I was going with that. This would be something that I would wanna make sure that this is a priority to give everybody on the new liaison, and again, if we're appointing people, we've gotta figure out who's being appointed and see if they still want to continue, and all that good stuff, so.
Yeah, so you'll have 2 weeks to figure that out,
Yep.
and then we'll have that meeting on the 19th, we will talk about the amphitheater, and we'll have a filled out application for that. We'll talk about these guidelines and start that discussion, and then, hopefully new members will bring new ideas, and we'll see where else we're going. Hopefully, we've also got good news from council that they're thrilled and happy looking at our sign code and our shelter idea.
Exactly.
Well, Phil and Happy will be interesting on the sign code. Shelter's going to be thrilling this, right?
Yeah, that'll be the fun one. So, any other new business? Anything anybody wants to say? Public
I have a
comment?
question on the reserves. What all are the reserves? I know pretty much like the new area, but is that like considered reserve, like coming in off of Minerva Lake where there's all those trees when you first like come in there?
No.
Or is it,
So,
Well, I mean, a little bit of that is village when you say reserve,
cause that's
Yeah,
just
when
like what.
There's a difference
First
between
come-
right of way and,
Right.
there's different areas that, so, I mean, there's right of way, there's reserve areas.
so that ground up front, when you turn in on Miller Lake Road, it's actually a privately owned area. Once we get outside of the right of way, right, there's, I say 15 foot off pavement is still ours.
Yeah.
And you get down into that ravine area there, that's actually owned, I forgot her name now, but, I mean, it's not.
on both sides of the creek or whatever you call it?
Yeah, she's got a house, I think her house is over on, what is it?
Lakewood or.
Thank you, yes, on the other side, and she's got a lot that extends behind her. And I can't remember which
I
owner
mean, I
owned
think
it.
they got like a trampoline back there or.
They might, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not really a buildable lot, right, because of where that water's coming in underneath the culvert right there in Cleveland Avenue. It
Well,
would,
I was always, the reason I bring it up, because I had thought that ours we had the side, like on the creek, we had this side of the creek and, because there's, what, the reason I bring it up, there's a couple dead trees there.
So we have, just to be,
So there's right of way and there's reserves.
yes,
Right, and that's what.
Yeah, so back to
what-
the-
yeah.
Right, and so this template specifically, we drafted for reserves because the right of way
dictated by different law,
is more difficult.
yeah.
And so the thought is, if we do this right,
Yeah.
then we might be able to also apply it to right of way.
Yeah.
Or we might not,
Yeah.
but we're gonna do what we know we
Start
can
one
do.
someplace first.
And right, and so as you see, you know, this just, for reserves, it just allows mowing, planting, and decorations, which is to be, you know,
To be
there's.
determined with
Right,
that.
and I'll tell you, Eric and I spent most of our time rabbit holing on this decoration idea, because just like sign code, when you start to talk about what's a decoration and what's allowed and what isn't, and then realize that it's not their property, it's our property, it gets, so
Well,
anyway.
Talking about putting lighting back there or something.
Well, and so, yeah, so we're mostly talking about mowing and planting,
Right.
and I think we've got, you know, good ideas to, you know, to move along and let people know exactly where they stand, exactly what they can and can't do.
So is the reserve pretty much more the new area than
Yeah,
it's more-
the existing area?
It's more designated, like when we platted that with MI, right, so there were specific pieces of property that were designated as reserve, which is a legal term on the plat, right? And it has certain rules associated with it, but it's essentially, it's public ground, but it can be dictated by policy and rule sets that the council can set down, or the administration for that matter. Right of way is very specific, and it is our property, it's our responsibility, but right of way has a lot of connotations that go with it from a legal standpoint that go back before this country was founded, back to English law, because of the rights of people to walk and take the horse upon it, and now vehicles, right? And it's for the traveling public, right? Whole different enforcement set the police can act upon, whole different rule sets the state and the federal governments can act upon. Different than our grounds, which is, you know, public, it's not private, but it's more under our control from a policy
We're
standpoint.
reserving it for later possible use, or for preservation,
Yeah.
as opposed to right of way, it's meant to
Right, to keep
be, it's
something
meant to
over
be
there.
safely traveled.
Yep. Exactly.
So
So actually,
yeah, there's some,
it's
throwing some
interesting,
mud in that water for you.
yeah, it's interesting,
No,
that piece of ground is actually called Reserve A, but it's privately held. You find that with some of the old plat, that these weren't, I don't know if they weren't dedicated or what happened, but there's
You
multiple.
talking about up at,
Yeah, at that corner, it's called Reserve A, but it's privately held by the Rose Hill people, or the woman, I don't know what her
on the
name is.
other side?
Yeah, on the other side.
Well,
So,
then she's the one that can cut the trees down.
well, they're her responsibility if they're off the right of way, absolutely, so, but, yes, so.
Further business? Adjourn, 41 minutes. No,
Nice
36
job.
minutes.